Nigel Farage standing up and saying that they're going to toughen the welfare system for migrants and deport thousands. This has attracted massive interest. And as Ian Collins just said, probably the first politician in our history to actually stand up and say what a lot of people have been concerned about. There are grey areas, and we'll talk to somebody in a sec about that, but he's basically pledged today to ban all foreign nationals from claiming benefits and scrap permanent resident rights in a move he says will save Britain from bankruptcy. Nigel and Zia Yusuf have said that this could save up to £250,000, and the United Kingdom should not be the world's food bank. This is supported by many. Everybody's come up on the left and gone, this is absolutely outrageous. What are we talking about? What's going to happen to people? I would say respectfully, it comes back to something I've said every single day whilst I've sat here, right? The world has changed. 10 years ago, if you mentioned the word immigration on a radio television show, you'd have been axed. This country has always done the right thing, morally, financially. Right now, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's energy, whether it's just, I don't know, this country is skint. It cannot afford the interest on the debts that it owes. And we're still opening the floodgates to people who come to this country. They don't work, they don't provide, they scam a system that is not tough in any way. They bring dependence, and that's in itself not been looked at for years. But now your indigenous population are missing out, and people are going, this isn't fair. And that's what Nigel Farage was trying to say. Let's take a look at what he said earlier. This is him describing how he would toughen up the welfare system for migrants.
We will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low-skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state. What we do know is that 1 in 6 claimants of universal credit alone today, 1 in 6 is a foreign-born national.
1 in 6 claimants of benefits in the United Kingdom in 2025 is a foreign-born national. We say a very good afternoon on Drive to Zia Yusuf, Head of DOGE and Chief Policy Analyst. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right. We both look better than we did the last time we saw each other. Zia, thank you for the time this afternoon. I want to start slightly differently. Obviously, when you make an announcement, as Nigel Farage did today, people will jump up and down. I'd like you, because there's a couple of questions that people have sent in already. What I'd like you to do is explain in detail this indefinite leave to remain and the 5 years and all of that, because I've had people say to me already today, what, so if I've been here 20 years and I work and I've done everything right, I'm going to be thrown out? Is this going to be like America? How would you, Zia, put it in layman's terms for people listening and watching right now?
Yeah, sure. So people can come here to the degree they come here legally, then they will be on a work visa. And after a certain number of years, currently it's 5 years, they get to apply for something called indefinite leave to remain. That's not a citizen yet. That comes later. But what ILR gives you, what indefinite leave to remain gives you, is basically unlimited access to our welfare state for the rest of your life. This is the fundamental issue. And then you can apply to become a British citizen after that. So what we are saying is we are going to abolish this ILR status altogether. We will replace it with a 5-year renewable work visa, which is something lots of countries like America, like Singapore, like the UAE, countries that attract great people from all over the world, that's what they do. And one of the key points here is, here's the fundamentals of what we've announced today, as Nigel said. Number one, welfare in this country will only be available to UK citizens when Nigel's the Prime Minister. That's number one. Number two, we will ensure that those migrants who are in this country, number one, pay their way. Number two, speak English. And number three, do not commit crime. The fact that this is considered remotely controversial, is a function of this state of decay, malaise and betrayal that this country has had inflicted on it by the political class for decades. So that is the only way that we are going to be able to avert what we're calling this Boris way. Boris let in 3.8 million people, over 90%, in fact 96% of them were non-EU, and this was legally. They were just talking about legal migration. The majority of these people are not working and never will work, and they are very young relative to historic migrant cohorts. and they are in the coming years going to be eligible for this ILR status, at which point they can bring even more dependents with them. And that is the line item that is going to cost north of £250 billion. The true number is going to be much bigger. The government deliberately hide data around foreign nationals using our NHS and state pensions and PIP and all of those things. So this is £250 billion fiscal disaster inflicted on this country by Boris Johnson and the Tories that Nigel, as Prime Minister, will be able to avert by taking the bold action we're talking about today. It is insane that British taxpayers, people watching this show, listening to this show, are paying every day for Britain to be a food bank for the world. If you are a migrant in this country, you must pay your way, speak English, and not commit crime.
See, when you explain it like that, and I think I wanted to do it that way for a reason. I've read a lot on it myself today. I mean, I've said repeatedly, Zia, that there's, to me, it seems that we're at a very important, well, a seminal point in our history, because we've always, as I said in the introduction, done the right thing. And I've always been proud that Britain's done the right thing, sometimes perhaps more than it should have, but we've got to a situation where we are skinned. As a country, we are skinned. And when you are as soft as we appear to be on the international stage, when the pull is so great, then you have an issue. But you have an even bigger issue when you're indigenous population, and people get really angry when I say that, but I keep saying it until they throw me off. When your indigenous population is then suffering. I heard a story this morning from a lady who works for me who's got 2 kids. She's a single mum. She's worked for 25 years. She's brought these children up. She works as a landscape gardener. She's a grafter, right? Her son's a really good rugby player, and at some point over the last week or so had quite a bad injury to his back, to his tailbone, and his doctor sent him for an x-ray. I won't name the hospital or tell you where it is. He was there for 7 hours. The hospital was rammed with people, freely admitted that many of them were migrants and had just come over. This is a fact. It's by the coast. People now live by the coast. He was eventually sent home after 7.5 hours and told, we don't have the facility to do this for you. You will either come back in a week or a month, or you'll have to go private. Now, I don't care who you are, and I don't care how the left attack me. Why should that woman pay her taxes and pay her NI and live her life correctly and never break the law, and her son miss out? And yet, when you say that to the left, they go, oh, you don't know what it's like to live in Eritrea. Well, I'm 100% behind what you said. Come to this country, build a business, employ people, pay tax, learn to embrace our customs, our language, but don't come to this country because we are a soft touch that you can knowingly take advantage to the detriment of people who have been born here. That's not rocket science, is it, Zia?
Not at all. And the fact, again, that what we're announcing today, that migrants, to the degree they're coming here legally, should speak English, more than pay their way and not commit crime, is remotely controversial. It underscores the point you're just making. And that's a heart-wrenching story that you've just laid out there. We hear this time and time and time again from people. You know, I could go to education, where in Wales, for example, in the great nation of Wales, the educational attainment of 15-year-olds is below the OECD average and below countries like Turkey, to whom the British taxpayer sends tens of millions of pounds of foreign aid every year. And, you know, as Nigel just said in that clip, 1 in 6 claimants of universal credit in this country last year were foreign nationals. We don't know the number in terms of claiming on NHS. We don't know the number on PIP. We don't know the number on state pensions. We don't know the numbers in adult social care. Why? Because the government, first the Tories and now Labour, deliberately hide these numbers from us. And if
let me read you.
It would be a catastrophe for them.
I've got a couple of questions. Let me read you something that came out online earlier. I won't say where it's come from. This person said it can be difficult to cut through the noise nowadays, but just to be clear, Farage is proposing to deport people who have been granted permanent residency in the UK unless they can speak professional English and earn higher wages. He will be deporting people you know and love. That is what we're up against. Your response to that, Zia?
Well, what we're saying is we're abolishing this concept of ILR to the degree people have been here a long time. You know, the previous question, you gave the example of someone who's been here 20 years and contributed. They should apply for citizenship. You know, there's a path to citizenship. They would get citizenship. That's fine. And they should do that. And if they value being here, then I think it's a reasonable expectation that they do that. We are going to introduce a work visa that is renewable every 5 years, so long as you continue to qualify and meet the criteria. But yeah, no apologies for this. The average salary will be meaningfully higher. we will be looking at your criminal record, we will be looking at your financial conduct, and we will look at whether you speak English to a proper standard. If you're interested in how ridiculous the current standard of English required for getting one of these ILRs, look it up online. It's comical. It's like what you'd have learned in foreign language classes when you were 11 years old. So we have to tighten this up. If we are going to be a serious country and stand tall on the world stage and ultimately be a country that can give foreign aid and do all of these things again, we've got to look after our own people first. And we make no apologies for this. Most of the questions in the Q&A with the press today after the press conference were giving us human stories of this person or that person, almost all of whom, by the way, would be absolutely fine under our new arrangements. Not one question about the plight of British people who are toiling, working 2 jobs to look after their kids.
But that's my point. So
I'm buckling under the pressure of the tax rises, and we're going to see in this next Labour budget more back-breaking tax rises for British people to pay for this food.
That's the point, by the way, and that's the point. You're absolutely spot on. I always on this show repeatedly say the population is struggling. They've paid for 50 years. They can't see a doctor. They can't see a dentist. They can't get anything at all. And the left will always say, but you don't know what it's like to live in a war-torn country, to which I always say and get slaughtered for, France isn't a war-torn country. Couple more things. You make a really good point. I took my show years ago to America, 2011, 2012, 2013. A renewable work visa. Trying to get a visa for the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, is a complete and utter nightmare. But it's a process you go through.
That's for someone like yourself, who's obviously coming to work, doing a high level of work. I don't know what you're earning, but it's probably a decent amount of money. But you still, you couldn't bring 12 dependents, could you? You didn't get access to all of their welfare systems.
Had to go through it to bring the kids and my then wife, all of that. It was difficult. So I don't see that. What I'd love to know, though, and this is, again, what a lot of people have said, we've looked at America and everybody jumps up and down about ICE, and Trump has had a major impact on what's happened in terms of the southern border, but people get offended about all of that. How do you envisage making this work? Let me give you a scenario that a couple of people have texted in already, and I think it's an important point to put to you. So you've got people in this country who have been here under the indefinite leave to remain. They've settled, they're on benefits, they've had children. Those children are in primary schools. How do you deal with that scenario, Zia?
Well, the way you deal with this, if you're being serious, which we are, is we've got to look at priorities, right? So we've already announced our plan to deport people who are in this country illegally. You're talking about people who are here legally. So the first point is UK Deportation Command, which will be the new agency that Nigel creates when he's Prime Minister, will focus on, not on 12-year-old children initially, clearly. It's going to be the 27-year-old Afghan who has come here illegally, right? That's where they're going to be 27-year-old male Afghan that they're going to focus on, which, by the way, the vast majority of Afghans who come to this country are, in fact, men. We all know that. People listen to the show know that. So it's a question of priorities. The second point I would make is, once you withdraw the benefits, once you say no more benefits for those foreign nationals, they either got to start working or there's really no other option for them. A lot of these people will leave of their own accord. Human beings, they adhere to incentives. Right now, we have the most attractive, generous, ridiculously over-the-top generous program. As I said, it really is not an exaggeration to say it's a food bank for the world.
And it's just really interesting what you...
Let's take that away. Let's take that away, and a lot of these people will leave of their own accord. But we're going to be really clear. In terms of the deportation command team, they're going to have to focus in those initial years on the people who have come here via small boat, who are largely...
But what you would understand, we've both got a job to do. What if these... I take your point, by the way, because I think if the pull is so great, people will always come. I've said for as long as I can remember that for me the deterrent is to make it less attractive and to say you will be stopped from landing, you'll be taken to a detention centre, which won't be like a 4-star hotel, because I'm sure as eggs is eggs here, the message will get back to wherever these people are coming from, like it's now done with America, that we're not a soft touch. My next question would be, over the years or over the months or whatever, what about the people who won't leave voluntarily? You get stuck with legal issues. Will they be forcibly removed? Will they be deported? That's an important question as well.
Yeah, look, we make no apologies for saying this. Yes, of course, there are going to be priorities for deportation command. This country hasn't basically enforced its borders, has not enforced immigration law for decades. So it's going to be something of a shock to the system to actually have an immigration policy that is actually enforced. Of course, we're going to start with those military-age males that come from the places like Iran and Iraq and Syria that make up the majority of the small boat arrivals. But yeah, look, we've been very clear about this. If you are no longer in the country legally, we will enforce immigration law, we will enforce our borders, and you can expect to be deported. This is perfectly normal in almost every other country on the planet, by the way. The fact that you're even asking me this question, and I know you're asking in good faith because it's been put to you, is a function of the ridiculous learned helplessness that has been drummed into British people. They're told, you can't have a border at all because of international human rights law. We can't stop these dinghies full of unarmed men, despite spending about 15, 20 billion quid a year on a Royal Navy. You can't enforce immigration policy because it's impossible to actually remove people and send them back to the countries from which they came. Every single one of those claims is demonstrably false, and Reform are going to prove that when they're in government.
Listen, I agree, and you're right. I'm asking the question because I get really fed up. Everybody knows that I voted Reform. I make no apologies for that. I get fed up when I read these sound bites that will grab hold of something and then trash the whole thing, because I'm utterly convinced that if you asked a majority of people in this country, they are fed up. They feel there's the silent majority. They've been trashed. It'll be very interesting.
Can I just say one thing, though?
Yeah, go.
Very quickly. Just very quickly on that. If you stop the benefits from going to them, and they're not in free hotel accommodations, that is already half the battle, just to be clear, right? Like, that is the most important thing we need to stop first and foremost, because it is one thing to ask British taxpayers to take more of their money because we need better service or whatever. That's one thing. But making that demand of British people who have made enormous sacrifices, you look through history, no people in the world have made greater sacrifices in terms of needs than the British people. But asking them to make those sacrifices while giving a free food bank for the whole world and free accommodation. By the way, we've only been talking about legal migrants here. We haven't talked about the illegal.
But Zia, I would actually go further. Not only have we bent over backwards for years, not only are we going to have our taxes imposed to a greater degree to pay for this ludicrous situation, but, and my thing I've gone about the whole time is, if a person who's paid their stamp, lived their lives correctly, never asked for a handout, seemingly in the United Kingdom in 2025, goes to try and get some genuine help, like the kid last night in the hospital, back of the queue, doesn't wash with the population, doesn't. Just one other thing. I know you're a busy man and we appreciate the time. You said in the midst of that, we want to stand tall on the world stage. Let's say Nigel Farage had been in number 10 today or over the weekend. Can you please respond to Sir Keir Starmer, who over the weekend announced that he's recognising the Palestinian state? Critics will say this is virtue signalling. Lammy's already stood up and gone, it's going to make absolutely no difference. Actually, have we got a couple of clips? Have you got those clips? I hope you don't mind. I want to play this to you. So Sir Keir Starmer stands up and says, we're recognising Palestine. This is what his deputy, David Lammy, said. If we could play that, please.
You want to recognise an independent state, but you're telling that independent state who its leaders should be. I think we used to call that a colony.
No. One, let us not confuse the Palestinian people with Hamas.
No,
two, let us recognise...
The question is, who's in government? Are you saying that you will not recognise the Palestinian state if Hamas is part of government? Or are you saying it doesn't matter who's in government and you will recognise them come what may?
Trevor, your viewers know that we are some significant distance from two states.
Which begs me to ask the question, Zia, and I've got one more for you, there's a reason for this, is what is the motivation if it's not virtue signalling? Because in my mind, that's what it is. But my concern is, having done this, we've got the most extraordinary clip, I don't know if you've seen this, from a Birmingham Muslim Council leader who says that this is what the British government should do to Israel now that Keir Starmer has recognised a Palestinian state. Just watch this.
Is it going to make an impact on Israel? I don't think so. I think Israel has ignored all laws which govern all of us, right? It's violated every single rule in the book. Is it going to make any difference to them? Probably not. And they're going to carry on killing in their thousands. And I think, if anything, the Western government needs to wake up and it needs to take military action against these guys.
Zia Yusuf, please respond to those two clips, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, well, look, number one, even though David Lammy is an appalling media performer generally, the reason he was so stumped there is because obviously this whole thing is virtue signaling. It is clear that, number one, as Nigel said this morning, all this does is reward Hamas. That is crystal clear. And Hamas, in its founding charter, and anyone who really cares about long-lasting peace in the region, as we do at Reform, as Nigel does, will know that Hamas's founding charter literally says that Israel is illegitimate, has no right to exist, and should be obliterated from the map. And it's also abundantly clear Keir Starmer's never taken part in a serious negotiation and come out on the other side. Why would he? He's been a human rights lawyer throughout his whole career. If you're actually, again, if you care about long-lasting peace in the region, which we do, then that element of Palestinian statehood was one of the most fundamental things, probably the single biggest thing that you have as an incentive to get the Palestinian side to make whatever concessions were necessary to get to that peace. So the biggest catastrophe of all of this is that even if the people behind this decision were motivated with good intentions, all they have done is made peace less likely as a result of this. So long as Hamas, who again could end the war tomorrow by releasing those hostages, so long as Hamas, who in their founding charter object to the very right of Israel to exist at all, there cannot be a lasting peace in the Middle East. And it is obvious, which is why David Lammy was squirming, that there can be that this whole thing was a virtue signalling exercise.
Really good to speak to you, my friend. I know you've had a manic day, but we appreciate you taking time on Talk Drive. Good to speak to you. Zia Yusuf, head of DOGE and Chief Policy there at Reform UK.